Hello, friends. Have you ever sat across the dinner table from someone you've known for decades and felt a silence so loud it hurt? Not rage, not love, just a hollow space where connection used to live. You make the meals, you share the bed, you even exchange words. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet resentment hums, steady, unexplained, and unbearable. You're not alone. This is Elaine's story, but it might be yours too. She once looked at her husband Thomas like he was her home, but now she dreads the sound of his voice in the morning, the way he asks what's for dinner, the way he doesn't ask anything else. Not because he's a bad man, but because the life they built came at a cost she didn't see coming. Today I'm going to talk about a truth many women carry silently for years, sometimes a lifetime. Why do women begin to hate their husbands as they age? And more importantly, what can be done before it's too late? This video isn't about blame, it's about breakthrough. It's about finally putting words to the things you felt but never dared to say out loud. So stay with me. What you hear may not just validate your experience, it may change the way you live the rest of your life. 1. Young love, silent sacrifice. Elaine met Thomas when she was 24. She still remembers the way he looked at her, like she was the answer to a question he didn't even know he was asking. He made her laugh with that crooked smile. He told her she was beautiful in ways that made her believe it. And most of all, he promised her something she had always craved: stability, a home, a future, a man who wouldn't leave. So she followed him, moved with him to a new city, left behind her job, her family, the little apartment she'd made her own. She adapted to his routines, his moods, his ambitions. She listened more than she spoke, smiled more than she felt. She told herself, this is love. That sacrifice was part of the package. But like so many women, Elaine didn't notice that every small compromise, every time she said yes when she meant maybe, every time she silenced a dream, a discomfort, or even a craving, it took a small piece of her voice. And over the years, those pieces stopped growing back. She became the glue of the family, the one who remembered birthdays, packed lunches, bit her tongue during arguments. She told herself she was strong, that this was what good wives did. But deep down, something was beginning to ache. Not loudly, not yet, but just enough to make her wonder, what happened to the woman I was becoming before I became someone's wife? And it would be years before Elaine realized just how much of herself she had given up, without even noticing. 2. The middle years, the quiet shift. By the time Elaine was 45, life looked full, but felt empty. She had 2 children, now in high school. A part-time job she took so she could still manage the house. She made dentist appointments, remembered birthdays, and kept the pantry stocked without being asked. She even remembered to smile at PTA meetings, and Thomas still expected dinner at 6. Still greeted her with the same 3 words each evening. What's for dinner? Never once asked how she was really doing. Elaine was tired, but she couldn't quite explain why. It wasn't the physical exhaustion, it was a deeper weariness, a kind of soul fatigue that comes from being emotionally invisible for too long. She didn't hate Thomas. Not really. What she hated was the silence. Not the silence in the room, but the silence between their lives. The quiet resignation of a marriage that ran more like a routine than a relationship. She carried the invisible mental load, the hundreds of tiny things that kept their world turning alone. He never noticed the fresh towels, or the way she'd started sleeping closer to the edge of the bed, or how she cried in the laundry room once, just so the kids wouldn't hear. Elaine missed being seen. Not just looked at, but truly seen. She missed conversation, curiosity, affection that didn't come with conditions. She missed feeling like more than just a fixture in Thomas's life. One night she tried to tell him. She waited until the kids were upstairs. She sat beside him on the couch, turned down the TV, and said, I feel lonely, even when I'm with you. He didn't look up, didn't pause, just said, I'm here, aren't I? That sentence, casual and cold, cut deeper than his silence ever had. And in that moment, something inside Elaine dimmed, not all at once, but like a light going out in slow motion. She stopped trying to be heard and started learning how to live quietly in her own sadness. for the unspoken resentment. By her 50s, Elaine had mastered the art of functioning. She smiled at neighbors, sent holiday cards, helped her daughter pack for college, and showed up at every family gathering with the right casserole. But inside, something had shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness anymore. It was resentment. A low, steady ache. The kind that hums beneath the surface while you fold laundry, or when you're making dinner again for someone who never asks if you want to. Elaine had been the backbone of their life together. She supported Thomas through every career move. She left a job she loved when they had to relocate. She stayed home when their son was sick for weeks. No one else could afford to miss work. She skipped her mother's funeral to be at their daughter's science fair because he said, "It's better for the kids." One by one, she set her own dreams down and never picked them back up. Now she couldn't even remember who she was before him, what she wanted, what made her laugh for no reason, what it felt like to be someone's priority, and Thomas still thought everything was fine, still bragged to friends about how lucky he was to have her, still didn't realize that being appreciated isn't the same as being known. Elaine didn't want diamonds or fancy dinners. She wanted to be asked, "What do you need?" She wanted someone to notice when she was quiet, to remember her favorite flower without her having to say it. But that version of marriage, the one with tenderness, awareness, curiosity, never came. And now all she had left were silent memories of the moments when he could have asked but didn't. She wasn't mad that life turned out differently. She was heartbroken that he never wondered who she could have become. Not once. And the hardest part? She had trained herself to stop expecting more, because it hurt less than the disappointment. But things weren't fine, not even close. And deep inside, Elaine began to ask a question she never thought she'd allow herself to consider. What if this isn't all there is? Fastened the breaking point, when love turns to bitterness. Elaine was 63 the morning it happened. The sun was rising gently across the kitchen tiles. Thomas sat in his usual chair, reading the paper, sipping coffee from the same mug he'd used for 20 years. She looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing. Not anger, not love, just exhaustion. A bone-deep fatigue that no nap could fix. This was the man she had promised forever to. The father of her children. Her partner, at least in theory. But in that moment, he felt like a stranger who'd taken up permanent residence in her life, without ever really seeing the rent she'd been paying. It wasn't the socks on the floor. It wasn't the forgotten birthdays. It wasn't even the sharp, thoughtless remarks that chipped away at her joy over the years. It was the cumulative weight of decades of not being heard, of explaining things twice, of swallowing her needs to keep the peace, of sitting in the car outside the grocery store and wondering if anyone in the world would notice if she disappeared. Elaine had been surviving on emotional breadcrumbs, a compliment here, a gesture there, but never the real feast she longed for: connection, partnership, presence, and the resentment. It didn't scream, it whispered, every time he walked past her without a glance. Every time he asked, "What's for dinner?" without once asking how her day was. Bitterness doesn't come all at once. It brews slowly, until it colors everything. Even the sound of the man you once adored chewing his toast. But here's the most surprising part. Elaine's story doesn't end in hate. In fact, it's where her real story begins. 5. The awakening and the choice to heal. One day, Elaine stopped waiting for Thomas to change. She'd waited long enough, fought battles in silence long enough. The years of hoping he would wake up and see her, really see her, had left her weary and worn. But in the stillness of that day, something shifted. Elaine realized that if she wanted something different, she would have to start with herself. No more waiting for him to get it. No more sacrificing who she was in the hopes he might notice. She began to reclaim the parts of herself she had buried. Her art, something she hadn't touched in years, the paintbrushes still resting untouched in their dusty corners. Her travel dreams, places she had once longed to see but always put off, waiting for the right time, the right partner. Her laughter, authentic, unapologetic, the kind she had forgotten she was capable of. Elaine made a choice to stop shrinking, to stop measuring her worth by the approval or absence of her husband's attention. She realized that healing wasn't about changing him. It was about changing herself. She told the truth, calmly, fiercely, clearly. She sat him down, and she finally said the words she had carried for so long. She spoke not from anger, but from a quiet, steady certainty that had been growing inside her for months. I can't keep living this way. I'm not asking for you to fix it. I'm telling you I'm going to fix me. Whether Thomas changed or not, she finally did. And in that moment of clarity, something profound shifted in her heart. Because for the first time in decades, Elaine felt something new. Light. Light from within herself, a glow that had been dormant for so long. She felt unburdened, not by his actions but by her choice to no longer let them define her. She was no longer a woman defined by silence, by sacrifice, by waiting for someone else to see her worth. She had redefined herself, not for him, not for anyone, but for her own freedom. Hate was never the goal. Healing was. And now, for the first time in years, Elaine could breathe freely, her heart a little fuller, her soul a little lighter. Elaine wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. Elaine's story isn't unique. It's the quiet truth of millions of women who've given everything and are now asking, what about me? If you saw a part of yourself in her, you're not alone. The journey from silence to self-discovery is one many are quietly walking, and it's never too late to step into the life you deserve. It's never too late to find your voice, to heal your patterns, and to begin again, with or without the person beside you. If this story moved you, like this video, subscribe for more life-changing reflections and share this with someone who needs it. Let's build a community of support, encouragement, and healing. And most of all, share your story in the comments below. Whether it's a word of wisdom, a moment of struggle, or a breakthrough you've experienced, we're all here to learn from each other. Let's remind the world that growing older doesn't mean growing silent.